Welcome to the Anti-Pattern Podcast, your ticket to the revolution in digital thread technologies. Please welcome, live from Mannheim, Germany, your hosts, Christian Muccio and Michael Fenning.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Anti-Pattern Podcast, and this is already our fourth episode. Christian and myself, we are sitting in a really rainy Mannheim today. It's not so nice out there.
No, definitely not.
Not really, right? And it's dark, right? We had to switch on the lights because otherwise you guys would not see us. So it's ugly, right? Hopefully spring is returning after today. Let's see. Yeah. So, but today is not so much about technology, right? We now did 2 episodes of, what is our product, what is our platform going to be. Today, we want to talk about the organization and how do we establish innovation in our organization, right? So this is today's topic. Lucky coincidence, we are in Mannheim, and you guys will, maybe if you're from Germany, you probably will know Mannheim.
I don't think so. So I didn't know these things before moving in this
region. Really? You didn't? So I'm the local, right? Christian's not from Mannheim and the area here. So Mannheim is known for innovations. This goes back years, many years, and centuries. For American standards, this is really long ago. This is 1648, right after the 30 Years' War in Europe. Mannheim basically had a problem; was completely destroyed, and there was not a lot of people still living here. To be honest, literally still living here. And so the back then Duke. So the Germans who are listening, please let me know what is Kurfürst in English. I think it's Duke. Herzog, maybe the same thing.
Maybe.
Oh, okay, I don't know, right? But the nobility from here, right? They decided they want to repopulate the area, right? And they brought in basically people from all over Europe, right? And this was also kind of a diversity story, to be honest, right? Brought everybody here, and for some reason, people were very innovative here, right? So just to mention a couple of examples, the predecessor of the bike, right, without the pedals, the Draisine, right, was invented in Mannheim in the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century. The car was invented in Mannheim.
Carl Benz,
1886, right? So also longer ago. And in the castle, basically, there is a little trail of plates with all the inventions that were done in Mannheim. Another one would be the proximity sensor. Pepper and Fuchs, right? That was invented after the Second World War.
Late 50s.
Late 50s, right? And Mannheim is basically in the middle of in the heart of the German industry, right? There's a lot of factories. It's not so much green out here, right? It's a lot of factories, a lot of manufacturing here. But it is where most of the economic value is created in Germany, right? Or a lot of it, right? Not all. Bavaria as well, and to the north a little as well, right? But it is. I would always say it is the heart. Not just because I'm from here, right? I would also say it's basically the heart of the German industry, right? So, and together with that, I have 3 book recommendations with me, right? Also something new that we wanted to start. And before we do that and come to the book recommendations, my question to you would be, Christian, are we already innovative?
I definitely think so, yes.
Yeah.
So if you look what we achieved in these 10, 12 weeks of work since we started this company, it's amazing to see what we already achieved just by saying we want to be cloud native. We want to be microservice ready. And basically, we already are microservice ready. So what we did in the beginning was building up first parts of the platform and building up pipelines. And exactly. Just these building processes allow us to be modular, much more modular than any other tool I know in our market.
In our PLM market, right? In other markets, of course, there's already that trend, and that is already established to some extent. But we are basically, from what we know, the first ones really building something cloud native.
Exactly, and to be honest, it's very easy as a startup. If you don't have legacy, you start on the green field. It's pretty easy to be innovative.
Right. And you said it. It's easy for a startup to be innovative. You would hope Other may have problems with that, right? But I agree it's easier compared to a corporate, to a big company. And why is that? This is our first book recommendation, The Innovator's Dilemma. Many people will already know this, Clay Christensen. And he unfortunately passed away not so long ago, a couple of years. And The Innovator's Dilemma basically talks about why is it that successful tech companies with a lot of revenue fail to innovate, right? And the reason for that is not that they don't understand what they need to do, right? Not that they do not understand the trend, not that they do not understand the technology, right? It's not really the case. The thing is, they sit on a very big revenue stream, big pile of money. And if they would go that way, and if that new technology or the new way of doing things would make it more efficient, cheaper, better, right? They would basically kill their own revenue stream or cannibalize themselves, right? So in other words, they sit on that big stream and they cannot move left or right. They sit on the platform because that platform basically pays the bills, right? And they cannot move. And this is something, luckily, so to say, we don't have that big revenue stream
we don't
yet.
have a revenue stream.
Why would you go after revenue, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
So that's the thing, so to say, we don't have that problem, right? Because we can just build what is necessary, right, without looking left or right. That's true, right? And to do that, right, you can set up different strategies. We may, continue in another episode about what is it that a disruptive strategy has in, or is different to a dominant strategy, right? Dominant strategy basically means you are better and cheaper than anybody else, right? And there's no reason to go to anybody else. So this is something maybe for the future. My question to you would be, so think about growing the company, right? Think about the next years to come. How can we stay innovative even if we are growing, even if we have to establish processes? How would you envision that?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's a big problem for most of the organizations I've seen with growing number of people staying innovative. But I think it's also a kind of a cultural thing. So what we would like to establish is an open culture, is an open communication, is the ability and the allowance to articulate ideas. And I think just having the ideas is pretty easy. Proving the ideas is much more complicated or much
making
difficult.
Something out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially if you think if a product manager has a good idea,
right,
mostly they are not able to realize it. They need someone else.
Not on their own. Yeah.
And having this time to really realize the idea, and this means this is a Pareto principle.
Right.
And I think most of the ideas you can prove the value with 1 or 2 or 5% of the effort it would take later to really implement it.
Right.
And that means
and let me stress on the one thing that you said is the open communication. I would even go so far and say open conflict, right? Because that reminds me on my first day in university. This is many years ago. I was sitting in the first lecture. This was mathematics, math 1, whatever, and the professor said basically his first statement was, don't hesitate to ask questions. There are no stupid questions. And then someone asks something and he shouts out, you don't know that? How do you want to graduate here? And from that on, nobody asked the question anymore, right? So then it was over. So this is exactly what we don't want to see, right? Open conflict helps you, right? You need the communication going. Right?
Absolutely. And the question is, if you communicate your idea, you want to realize your idea. People need time for this.
Right.
And we want to try to really be able to offer our stuff a focus Friday. A Friday without meetings where they can really work on the customer project really in depth. Or you can spend this time to elaborate or realize one of these ideas and bring them to the team.
To have some creative time, right?
Exactly.
not being interrupted by meetings.
Yeah.
Right. This is crucial. Yeah.
And another point that we would like to do is establishing an architecture board.
Oh, right. And for those of you who don't know what an architecture board is, right? My personal feeling is if I would be a company purchasing software from someone and that vendor doesn't have an architecture board, I would, run away screaming because you need an architecture board, right? This is an important thing. Architecture board makes sure that the specifications basically that go then into the product or are input to the product development process, that they are accurate and consistent to each other, right? This is the main task of the architecture board. It sounds a little like a contradiction, right? Because you establish a committee, right? And processes and, and then how do you want to be innovative if you do that, right? But I guess we do that differently, right?
Exactly. I think we will establish it differently. On the one hand, why should a architecture board have influence on ideas?
Right.
That doesn't make sense. So the architecture board comes very late in the ideation process, from my point of view, which also means they are not accounting the resources,
Allocating the resources. Yeah. They
so
don't do that.
that's not the job of an architecture board.
Yeah.
It's on the one hand the personal responsibility of each
Right.
of each individual or team leader or whatever.
Right.
It's not the responsibility of the architecture board.
Right.
And the idea is, our idea how to establish an architecture board is...
It sounds a little recursive, but yes.
Yeah.
Ideas about ideas, yeah.
That in the end of this process, so somebody had an idea, somebody proved the idea, has proven it, that it is working, that it is
Right.
leveraging something, then the architecture board comes into the place to say, okay, it is consistent, everything great. It's not already invented, or you don't reinvent the wheel. But maybe your idea is that good that it should not stay in this one application. It should come on the platform level.
Right.
This is a decision the architecture board can make in the end of this innovation process.
Right.
And then I think we are already differently to any other architecture board.
Exactly. So we basically need to do both things. We need to establish an architecture board to make sure that the platform and the data models and everything stays consistent, right? That you don't have all that chaos, right? That you see, all that overlap that we already talked about. And on the other hand, we still need to be innovative. So it should not be too restrictive, the process that is involved with this, right? Yeah. And talking about culture, for me, always important is ideas can come from anybody, right? And most of the times the managers are usually not the ones having the best ideas. Right? Usually the people that actually do the work have the best ideas, and the managers only control the resources, meaning managers decide what is, where do we spend the money, right? They don't control what is a great idea, right? So this is something that I want to make sure is part of our culture as a company, right? And people always say flat hierarchies. What does it mean, flat hierarchy, right? Means don't think about too much who's your boss and who has what status and who makes how much money, right? For a startup, completely not important, right? You first have to survive, basically, right? So that is definitely true. And sometimes it even helps to say, let's separate the person from the idea, right? We have that misunderstanding usually that ideas have an origin in terms of a person, right? Have an author, right? This is from most of what I've experienced not the case. Most of the times it is more like I have an idea. I'm happen to be the first one mentioning it, right?
Articulating
it, because the idea is basically in the room. It's in the discussion, right? And you got it. And if you have waited 5 more minutes, another person would have got it, right? So in other words, ideas should flow around freely, right? And there is no author to it, right? So don't be too egoistic, right? Leave your ego at home where it belongs, right? And we don't want to see, the testosterone running from the ceiling, right? So this is something we should avoid, right? So, and that leads me to my second book recommendation, right? So if you say we have a flat hierarchy, and if you say we want to be innovative, and usually then you have a lot of stuff happening in parallel, right? A lot of innovation happens in parallel that creates sometimes a little chaos, right? This is a chaotic process, right? That you need to have. But how do you make sure that still things are fitting together? And what is it that bounds everything together, right? It is something that needs to hold the people together, and this is a common vision, right? And, this is my second book recommendation, Start With Why, right? Simon Sinek. It's important to make sure that everybody understands, where is this company heading, right? Do you know why? Can I wake you up 3 a.m.?
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
I hope so that the correct answer is that we would like to have a look on the PLM concept,
Right.
like it's existing for 3-4 decades.
Right.
But thinking about how would we solve the PLM concept nowadays with nowadays technology.
Right. In other words, and we had that before, right? We are not building another PLM monolith. We are going back in time, right, to look at the initial PLM concept, which was a federative one, right, and say, what is the critical component for that federative PLM approach to work out? And this is what we are going to develop. It's not a PLM monolithic tool, right? It is a digital thread system, how we call it, right? It's the core component of a federative PLM approach, right? This is what we try to achieve, and that's our purpose, right? This is why we are here,
Yeah.
right? It's not the money, as you would say.
Whereas I know companies where a revenue target is the vision, which is not a vision for mine.
Maybe it is for the owner, but not so much for the employees. That's true.
Exactly.
So you need a real purpose, and money is just, it's just there to realize it, but it's never itself. It's not a purpose. True, right? So in other words, the why behind it matters, and to actually do this, right? It's not enough to have the vision, to have the people following the vision. It's also that the entrepreneurs, both of us, and some others in the future, the leadership of a company, we need to embody that vision, and to embody that vision, let me say the following: it's not the best idea to just be some business guy that you can bring into any company, right? It's more like, we are, the two of us, we are deeply connected to PLM, right? We could never run a company that does financial whatever processes, right? We are in this market. We are bound to
engineers.
Both of us are engineers, basically, right? So this is something that you need to be in PLM to embody the vision as well, right? And that leads me to my third book recommendation, The Power of Expert Leaders, Credible, from Amanda Goodall, right? And this book basically talks about why is it that it's so crucial for successful startup and tech companies that the leadership team knows their stuff, right? Knows what it means to, in our case, build a PLM tool, know what product configuration means, know what CAD is, what CAD is, right? This is important. And if you are not, trained in that area, you cannot embody the vision. Even if you know it by heart, you read a lot of it, right? If you never worked in it, you cannot embody it. And that is important. This goes also back to what, there was an interview with Steve Jobs many years ago. I watched it on YouTube. We actually watched it together, right? Where he talks about, we were growing at Apple, and then at some point we had to hire managers. But the problem with those managers they were all bozos. And we were laughing so much. And I looked it up. Bozos actually comes from the clown from a circus, right? So, and we see that actually a lot, I think, in big enterprises.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So. And the interesting thing is definitely to have people not just being the expert, right, but having expert leaders, which means they have to be T-shaped on some,
right,
in some manner.
Right.
And what we don't want to be is a company built on PowerPoint BS.
Right.
There is a lot of stuff happening in the market, and very often you see the slides are changing, maybe the names are changing from the products, but the software behind does not change.
True.
And it sometimes seems that to quote someone who you don't want to quote at the moment, there are too many companies running by MBAs, which, by the way, you are doing an MBA at the moment.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah. It's actually true. Right? I'm currently doing my executive MBA here in Mannheim and then ESSEC in Paris, and it's true. And I really think an MBA by itself has no meaning to us, at least, right? It's something you can do in addition to what you've been doing, right? So I'm an engineer by heart, and I do the MBA to better understand what does it mean to run a company, right? But doing it standalone without having the background in something else, right, is for me basically, at least if you want to be an accountant, then maybe yes, right? But if that's not the case, then it's not worth it. It's not worth doing it if that's the case. Yeah. So in other words, what we want to be is a product-led company, right? So product is in the core, is in the focus, and the leadership must understand what it means to use our product, what it means to be an engineer, right? Using our software to better support the engineering process, right? And that's what we want to be.
Exactly.
Right. With that being said, I had 3 book recommendations. Please let us know if it's worthwhile. Also looking into books that we can recommend and read, right? This is actually something we did in preparation for the company, so maybe it was helpful. And that leads us to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for watching and listening in. Leave us a comment, a like, maybe subscribe to our channel, and then see you next time.
Goodbye.